Alrighty then.
Welcome to Indoor Fun.
Alrighty then. Just changing out my snooker shaft for my pool shaft. I was playing snooker yesterday, and it was actually an interesting day. So started to try to explain the rule, like push shot, double kiss, that type of a shot. Because a lot of times in snooker, I noticed, people will basically shoot, directly into balls when the cue ball's right next to it, right? And it's definitely a push shot, right? You're pushing through. Your cue tip is hitting the cue ball multiple times on the way through. And I was kind of giving some examples of how you can avoid that and what the rules are. And actually, it was really interesting because then I came back and I did a bit of research because I'm not a snooker player. I'm an 8-ball player, 9-ball player. I play snooker to work on, my accuracy. So I'm learning some new rules that I didn't know about before. And actually, I was wrong yesterday. Well, I shouldn't say I was wrong. What I do I think is okay. But in the snooker world, they don't have the same concept of, kind of, coming up at 45 degrees to kind of avoid, a double kiss, right? So what they have in snooker is a little bit different. You basically just need to shoot away from the object ball, and generally that's considered to not be a push. Although I will show you a couple of controversial clips here where some of the best players in the world have been called on a push shot, and they definitely disagreed on it. And you can kind of take that in and look at it. So I'll put it in. I'll put it in here.
How will it hit its foul?
What?
It's a push from it.
You having a laugh?
No, it was a push.
Thanks to the precise clarity of the current rules of snooker, I can tell you this definitely was a foul. But if we slow shots down enough, we can see exactly what happens, even if the balls are really close together, and is slightly controversial foul. The rules of snooker say a push shot is a prolonged or double hit of the cue ball. This usually happens when the object ball's in close proximity and the shot's being played square on. It's usually fairly obvious when this happens in real time, because whatever spin's put on the cue ball, it still runs on at full speed, and this looks unnaturally fast. Ronnie would have been aware of this, but crucially he was playing the shot at an angle, meaning the cue ball had space to run away before he struck it a second time. So you can see from this that it obviously wasn't a foul.
But if you really slow it down, you can see technically it was a foul.
The only problem is everything we need to see happens in between these two frames, which we don't have, and it's impossible to recreate it perfectly. But we can work it out, because if tip, cue ball and object ball are all touching, this is considered to be a push shot and a foul.
But let me show you a couple things like I was just talking about with regards to a general push shot and how you can avoid it. Stay tuned. So here's a classic example that I see guys and girls do on the snooker table recreationally, and it is a foul. And it's when your cue ball is close to the object balls, whether it's your red ball or a colored ball, or whatever you're aiming at, and you basically just shoot through the balls. I see that all the time, and it just makes me cringe, right? And sometimes, it may be, that you didn't maybe hit it quite as blatantly as I did there, but maybe it's more like, you kind of went, right? But you're definitely pushing through, and that's a foul. That's a foul in all billiard sports. So it's definitely a foul in 8-ball, 9-ball, and in snooker. But let me explain what generally you do. So in 8-ball, whenever this cue ball gets so close to the object ball, right, you can't just hit it, because it's going to double click. I don't know if you could hear that. I'll do a close up afterwards, but it's definitely going to double kiss. So what happens in 8 ball, 9 ball is generally, as long as you jack up 45 degrees, right? Generally, you won't get called on a foul there. But in snooker, because the table is so big, right? It's pretty hard for you to get to the middle of the table at 45 degrees. It's a lot easier to do that on a small 4x8 8-ball table or 4.5 by 9 9-ball table. It's a lot easier to kind of get up at an angle, right? So in snooker, they have a little bit of a different concept. And the concept is that you're just supposed to shoot away from the object ball. So as long as you shoot away from it, right, then it's not considered a foul or a push. Now you could cheat it a little bit, and I think this is where some of the controversy comes, right? Sometimes the referees, they end up calling it a foul, right? So say you didn't quite, you're kind of stretch it a little bit because for example, I know I can push that potentially in if I, maybe I just cheat a little bit, right? And I can push it into the pocket, right? Well, that one a lot of times will be called a foul, right? That'll be called a push shot. And it definitely made contact, a couple of contacts. Let me get a close-up view of what happens when it is a push, a double contact. You'll see. Alrighty then, so I've got my my camera pointing down at the balls, and right, so here I'm less than a cue. So basically they say, if you're less than a chalk, right, like within that, it's going to be very hard to hit that without double kissing if you're hitting it straight on like this, right? Very difficult to have observed that, but I'm pretty sure I double kissed. Because it's very hard to pull back the cue stick in time. That one I did. I definitely pulled it back, but it's very difficult to do. That's why, in 8-ball, 9-ball, generally when it gets close, right, we just kind of jack up, and it makes it a little bit easier to make sure that you don't get called for a foul, right? Because referees are watching, right? And they're on a human, and if they're a lot of times they're going to go by just observing the distance and then knowing how difficult that is, and then they'll listen. But sometimes they won't be able to hear it, and you may get a call anyway. But as you get closer and closer, right? So if I get like this, I'll just double check. Pretty sure I'm okay there on my video feed. Right now I'm like half a chalk. Really, if I go straight on, I could hear that double kiss, right? And I'll try to do a slow motion replay of that. And I think that should help. But the closer you are, it's almost impossible to hit that straight, right? Without double kissing it. That's definitely a double kiss. Very, very difficult. Now, I will say that one of the things that snooker players have started to do, and a lot of them don't like it, they miscue. It's a miscue on purpose. So basically what you do is you go right to the outside edge of this ball, and then you just touch this ball, and the cue ball will just touch the 8-ball. All right, it's just a way of avoiding a foul. And sometimes they'll do it even like really bad. Like they'll basically just touch it like that, and they just end up frozen right against the ball. It's within the rules. It's just That's a tough one to swallow.
People are even calling for them to be banned, like this miscue shot that Kyron Wilson's demonstrating here. So what's the point of this? To play a legal shot, the tip of your cue and nothing else must strike the cue ball once and only once. And that's fairly easy when there's a big gap like this between the cue ball and the object ball. However, touchy little roll-up shots like that are a completely different story, because if you just feather the cue ball, you give away a foul, and if you strike the cue ball at the same time as the cue ball striking the object ball, you essentially hit it twice. And we call this a push shot, and it's also a foul. And it's here that the miscue shot can make things easier. So here's how you play it. To start off with, line up at about a 70 to 80 degree angle of the direction you want the cue ball to travel in. And you need to strike the cue ball with about a half to a third of your tip. So you're just going to push through to make about 2/3 of your tip miss the cue ball and a third hit it. And it's a pretty easy shot to play, because I can push the cue through as far as I want, knowing this will never be a push shot. In fact, this makes this type of shot so easy, people have even called in the past for it to be banned.
I think they should ban the shot, because it just doesn't look right.
This is a shot that I think everybody should learn, because it's easy to play, very helpful when it comes up, and I don't think it can ever be banned, because you can't ban somebody from miscuing. Otherwise you'd say, well, is that a miscue or was that all right? And there'd be that grey area in between. The only thing you could do is say you had to hit a rail like you do in pool, but that's not going to happen. So
But that's the way the game goes. Trying to think if there's anything else I can really talk about for this particular. This is probably going to be a short video, but you know, I think it's important to understand that, you know, when the balls are frozen, right, or almost frozen, that you're not allowed to go straight through it, right? That's a push shot, right? And that's a foul in snooker, right? Now, if they're frozen, you can actually, in snooker, there's a rule where it's considered to have already made contact and you can just shoot away. And that's part of the rules. If it's not quite frozen, you just have to make an effort to shoot away from the object ball. So as long as I'm shooting away from it like this, then it's not considered a push shot. If you start to take advantage of that angle, you can get caught. And that's where the controversy is in some of these other clips that I'll show you. Anyway, I hope that helped. I'll be doing some more videos, you know, in the coming weeks. I like doing this. I think some of these, you know, more standard basic stuff, you know, some of the rules that maybe people don't understand, or, you know, some of the basic concepts and techniques I think are important as well. Not just doing all the fun trick shots and all that stuff in the runouts. So I'll see if I can't come up with some other good ideas over the next little while. But for now, that's it. See ya. Thanks for watching. See ya.